early 1999, a small, damp village in the southern stretches of Lochollow became the centre of a quiet theological dispute. But it wasn't between rival churches or clashing denominations. St. Francis of Caelmouth had been closed for 12 years. Some say longer. The congregation had dwindled as residents from nearby Harrowwick left the area when it was closed to the public, and when the final priest fell ill in 1991 after a visit to Fens, the doors to the church closed for good, leading to locals referring to it playfully as the vacant church. In the winter of 1999, as the world waited for a new millennium, something changed. Candlelight was seen flickering behind the stained glass windows of St. Francis. Strange sounds, described as droning and infantile, was heard echoing across the marshlands Caelmouth was known for.
Well, you come by here, you'd be walking your dog late, yeah, you know, as it is, and you'd see someone looking out at the bell tower, but they wouldn't move, you know, they're like you can see a human moving and breathing, you know, they'd be so still, like they were just in a trance or something. And then you come past the next day, you know, walking the dog and whatever, and it'd be the same face, in the same position, like they hadn't moved at all. Like statues. It's weird. That's weird, isn't it?
Residents in Caelmouth are pushing for the removal of squatters from this historic St. Francis church. Local law enforcement says they have been unable to enter the premises as the church is legally abandoned and the squatters pose no provable threat.
But this wasn't a normal squatting case. There were no signs of forced entry. There was no political or environmental message being hung from the windows, and despite no evidence of anyone entering the premises in the months after the squat began, the church's new congregation inside seemed to grow larger week by week.
I was baptized in that church. I married my wife in that church. I buried my wife in that church. I stood at that door every Sunday for 37 years, welcoming people in. And now I have to stand outside and watch strangers, squatters, make a mockery of it. They don't sing hymns. They're in there making noises like it hurts them to make a sound. And I heard it from the road. I heard the noises they're making, and it wasn't worship. It was like animals. Animals pretending to pray. Where we could be singing hymns.
Who took the photos was never publicly confirmed. Residents were urged by village authority figures to stay away from the former church, and not long after, the surrounding area was patrolled by Lochollow Institute officials. Some say it was a teenager with a long-lens camera. Others blame a radical religious group. But the photos, once sent anonymously to the ONN, were quickly broadcast, and with them, a face that would keep Lochollow children awake at night. He became the Smile Man. Some believed he was their preacher, a leader. Others thought of him more as a caretaker.
He's not from here. I knew everyone from that church. I was in the congregation, but that man, he looks like nobody I remember. He doesn't belong here. It makes me feel unsafe and uneasy, all of them, being in there in our church. We have no idea what they're up to in it. and nobody round here wants to do anything.
Strangely, in the years since the events that unfolded, other former St. Francis congregation members have come forward with new evidence of what appears to be the Smile Man appearing in photos taken at churches throughout recent history. On June 19th, 1999, unmarked cars arrived in the early hours at St. Francis. No police insignia and nothing identifiable. No news outlets were called. Just 5 black vans, a witness testimony and 2 photographs. And by morning, the church was empty once again.
I wasn't trying to expose anything. I have no idea what was going on. But I had my camera on me and I just wanted proof that something happened. And I couldn't see anyone else around. You'd hear stories, you'd walk past it at night and it's all lit up, like someone's holding a mass in there. But nobody had seen anyone come or go. They couldn't all be staying in there, there was too many of them. So I decided I'd wait overnight. They must come out at some point. It must be in the middle of the night when everyone else is in bed. Everyone's gone home. I climbed up to the ridge behind the rectory, and you can get a clean view while being out of sight of the church if you lie flat. But nobody came. All night, nobody came. And then it was the early hours that the vans arrived, and I managed to snap the photos. But it wasn't just a removal, you know what I mean? It was organised. You could tell they'd done this sort of thing before. I swear to God, one of them knocked and the doors opened, just like that. And when the people came out, the people that were inside, they weren't fighting like you'd assume. If they'd been living there all this time, they'd want to stay in their home, but they weren't fighting. They weren't shouting. They were calm. They walked out like they'd been waiting, like they knew that someone would come to pick them up, like they're waiting for a taxi. One of them, one of the pale ones, looked right up at me, like where I was. Like I said, I was pretty hidden away, but even at that distance, it felt like he saw me watching, almost like there was some weird connection between us.
There are no public records of arrests, no known facility for detainment, and no trace of the congregation or the Smile Man. Some believe the group were simply inbred squatters, perhaps descendants of a failed religious commune that once settled near Lochollow in the 1800s. Others think they were part of something older, more biblical, that perhaps never fully left the church's foundations, even once.
We knew that a group was inside the church. I mean, everybody did, even the Sikhs and the Muslims. But the church instructed us not to intervene. Let them pray was the message. I thought that meant to God.
Vacants. Beings or people or was people who appear and present almost as human, but are missing something essential. They are mimics of speech, expression, and faith. It's not a natural gift. They are lost. But the impression, the act, it's never quite right. This does not mean they should be treated as anything less than an enemy. Vacants want us to be comfortable with them. Allow them to replace otherwise missing family and friends. But how about those who didn't need replacing?
What if this congregation wasn't human in the way we understand? What if their worship was an imitation, a mimicry of divinity, taught to them by their own misunderstanding. In 2002, county tourists came to visit the site of the still-closed St. Francis Church and reported hearing muffled choir music beneath the ground at the back of the building. One of them took a photograph down a ventilation shaft found against the back wall. What it shows is still debated. Francis remains closed to the public to this day. Local officials and religious heads alike refuse to acknowledge the church, hoping that in time the locals will forget. As for the vans, there was no registration and no way to trace them. Whoever occupied the vacant church was worshipping something, but who these people truly were, we will probably never find out.